today I am chatting with Ree from Tea Curious, all about the importance of water with tea. Tea is mostly water, so it's very, very important. And I'm really excited to share all of her knowledge with you guys. So thank you so much for joining us, Ree.
Yay! Yeah. I mean, I already unloaded all my excitement on Nicole before recording, but I'm super excited too. Like you said, water is like the foundation. As much as I'm a tea person, we kind of like inevitably became water people out of necessity. So I'm excited to share what we've learned along the way and to kind of like, I know I'm going to break it down like from the very beginning. Water might not be either it's like you really love this topic or you're like, oh, like, do I gotta like do this topic? And if you're not worried about water, if you've never encountered water issues, it's really not going to be a problem, no stress. But if you're not sure, or if you've heard about it through the grapevine and you want it broken down in a way that's like very tea friendly, we'll do it. And it's inevitably going to be fun, I think. So
Definitely.
I'm excited. Yay.
Yeah, so water is something I kind of took for granted for a long time because I live in an area that just happens to have pretty good water.
Yes.
That like it's not super hard. It generally like doesn't make any off taste in tea. So I never really like I knew water was important, but I never put that much kind of thought into it. But then there was one day at World Tea Expo actually. I don't know if you remember this. There was like a water filter company there, and we got them to do like a blind tasting with teas using two different like mineral waters. And the difference was insane. That I was like blown away. That like the color was different, the taste was different, just the aroma was different, like everything was different.
Right.
I had never really seen such a like shocking show of the importance of water in the tea.
Yeah. When you say that, the word insane is just the word that always comes to mind when we do water tests like that. I do remember this company, and like I remember baby Rhea had like my neurons firing, like, water, huh? Like, I wonder why they're doing water here in like, the desert. Like maybe they don't like our water here. And because most people hear about it through the grapevine. Like you hear about it through like some blog or like someone says, oh, water is important. Like someone telling you like your multivitamins are important. It's like, really? But then when you sit down and do that side by side, it's insane. And for anyone listening to this who might be like, oh, my palate's not good, or I'm not that sensitive of a taster, or maybe I'm not that developed of like a tea person. I don't know what you think, Nicole, but I feel almost everybody can taste the difference between like a side by side. It's not like a little snooty, like subtle thing, like, oh, there's like a touch more like honey on the end, and this one has more like wildflower honey at the beginning. No, it's like, oh my God, these are different teas.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if you just look at like say bottled spring water, like we all have like different brands that we prefer for different reasons. And I think that, if you can taste a difference with just plain water, obviously you're going to taste that with tea too.
Absolutely. Even for those people who are like, oh, I don't really taste the difference between waters, I think tea makes it even more so obvious what the differences are. So yeah, I think I love that you started this, because if you're listening to this, you should give it a try if you haven't already. And if you have, like, well, we're on board. We finally get to talk about this. It's
awesome. So what do you think is kind of like the best water for tea? I know that's kind of a loaded question in a way, but
oh my Lord, Nicole. When we first started doing our like developing the formula for Tea Curious water, which if you're listening, again, like if you want to get it, you can get it. If you don't want to get it, don't get it. It's okay. But we have this water formula for tea that basically mimics bottled water, because me and Steven had been using Fiji water for like many, many years, because Steven's dad worked at a beverage company and we could get free Fiji water, and Fiji water is kind of a good water for tea. And so, yeah, but it sucked so much to have all that plastic all the time. And it just felt bad. The tea tasted good though, but it felt bad. Anyway, we set off on this journey during the pandemic while the rest of the world was doing like sourdough extravaganzas or expanding the plant collection. Me and Steven were like, hell yeah, we're going to do water. We're probably going to like finish like our water research during the pandemic. We'll hunker down and be crazy water people for like, everyone thought it was going to be a month, right? A month or two. It was 2 years of testing to develop Tea Curious water. And the question was like, what's the best water? We really thought if we tried hard enough, we would find the best water like shining, coming down from like the heavens. Oh, there it is, like perfectly fine-tuned with a perfect balance of like minerals and ions and the perfect pH, and like all the studies support that this is the best water.
That's big.
Like, how could we not know as tea people that everything is subjective? I was so excited with the water we developed, and it was perfectly suited for me and Steven's taste. But once we started testing it with other people, like folks in our community who were wonderful tasters, and some of them were a little bit more experienced, some of them a little bit less, fine, no problem. Different opinions came out, you know? And sometimes we would lose to friggin' like tap water. And I'm like, how is this possible? Most of the time we did not lose to tap water. Our water is very, very good. But sometimes you would have someone prefer an unfiltered tap water from Las Vegas. And for reference, Nicole's water, I think you guys measure at like 30 TDS, like
I think so.
Minerals.
Mm-hmm.
And TDS is just like an estimate of how much mineral like content is in the water. You're at 30 in your area. We're at like 600, 500, 600. So 20 times heavier, right, over here. And, you know, like some people did prefer the tap water. And I'm like, are you serious? And while that was a little like bitter at first, I'm like, I can't believe our perfect water that was sent from like the tea gods is not like 20 out of 20 people. It's like 19 out of 20 people like it. But that one person left behind. And just like tea, it's subjective. The way that you grew up, the area that you grew up in, the water that you're using to brew your tea as you're like falling in love with tea really shapes your taste and preferences for water. And while that might seem intimidating at first, I kind of think of it like the excitement of like having different pots. Like, how does a gaiwan change a tea versus like a Yixing teapot versus a wood-fired teapot? What kind of wood-fired teapot are we talking? And, you know, when you first get into it, it's like, oh, so many factors, but just taste it and have fun with it, play around with it. Like if I come visit you, it's like, Nicole, I have this tea that I brought. Let's try using your water. And then something will come out. And I think that's awesome. I love the waters that we've developed, but then there's something also beautiful about being able to visit, let's say you, and then taste like, oh, this is what Nicole is tasting if she's drinking like a Taiwan oolong. This is not my Taiwan oolong in the morning, but how cool is that? So there's no one best water. That's the long answer. Short answer is, if you're like, dude, answer the question. Like water, soft water is better. Like what Nicole has, not me, not ours. That's like the classically beautiful, according to like Chinese tea thought, water is soft water. I kind of disagree with that though. Subjective is fun. I like
yeah, absolutely. And also there's so many different kinds of tea. Like it is impossible for one water to be the best tea for be the best for every type of tea.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So, you know, at first it's like, man, I wish we had the answers. This is like a tea thing too. I wish I had the answer. And now it's like, nope. It's the kaleidoscope of taste across all the different tea types.
Because I know like years ago, there was like a really big trend where a couple of the tea places like near me were using reverse osmosis water. Ooh. And I just felt like I felt like their tea tasted very flat to me with the reverse osmosis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you feel about that? Like when you tasted, how would you perceive it?
I don't know. It just did not have like a flatness to it to me that like compared to if we were just using like regular filtered tap water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel you. That is very interesting that they did that because we actually like RO water now. But if you told 3 years ago, she'd be like, what are you smoking? Why do you like RO water? It tastes so flat. I remember what I tasted at the time. It tasted empty. Like there was something missing in the tea, especially the texture was very, very like thin. But, you know, we'd seen some studies and had heard from some tea teachers who preferred RO water. And as we were learning more about the subjectivity, I'm like, I wonder what it is about what they're tasting that they like. And so I think it's familiarity, you know, especially if you are coming from a mineral heavy water, it's hard to go from like a very hard water to going to very soft water. It's like, I don't know, if your mom cooked really, really spicy chile verde and then you suddenly like went to like not so spicy chile verde, it's like, I don't like that as much. Whereas other people, it's just different.
Definitely.
So I'm actually like, I like RO water now, but I find that very interesting that they decided to do that because we consider RO water to be a no go if we're brewing for most people because most
Mhm.
people's tastes are suited to mineral heavy water. It's what's naturally in water. Most
Definitely.
waters that we ever brew with as people studying tea have minerals in them. And all this water study, all this water experimentation, at least for us, I'm not sure how you feel about it, is meant to like, I mean, you're like a curator and like a guide too. It's the knowledge is most important when you can like deploy it with someone else. If I'm sitting down at this tea table and someone comes for tea, I know that the RO water that me and Steven sometimes will choose will taste flat to people, you know? So then you can start choosing like, okay, well, there's my taste and also be aware of what might be good for the tea. It all comes back down to the tea. What is going to be good for this tea? Let's test this, make decisions, make opinions, build that flavor library of like, oh, I tasted RO water there, too flat. This mineral water here, liked it. Went and visited, I don't know, Yosemite, loved the water there. And then you can start building like, I don't know, like, okay, it all condenses down to I have all this knowledge in water and otherwise. What can I do to make this tea shine with this setup and this person I'm having tea with? So yeah, I will just like for fun disagree. I'm like, I can't believe they used RO water. As someone who likes RO water,
Mhm.
crazy.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's definitely I think that's a really good way to look at it, though. That it's really like you're wanting to make the tea shine, and
Hmm.
there's a lot of different ways that you can do that.
Totally.
So I know we talked about some things that like if somebody isn't as familiar with the ways of water,
Mhm.
what makes water hard or soft?
Interesting. So we talked about Nicole's water being like a 30, and then my water being like a 600. It's like, what does that mean? Um, that is showing us how many minerals are inside the water. And when you have water, it's not just H2O, it's things like calcium, magnesium, sodium, chloride, which it's not chlorine, it's chloride. People get confused about this. And you don't have to memorize all this stuff up front. But all we know is that there are natural minerals in water that get accumulated over time as water passes through the natural environment, right? So my 600 ppm or 600 TDS water, parts per million, or total dissolved solids water, 600 minerals, 600 ppm comes from our water moving through the Colorado River Basin. And all of that, like limestone, chalky, like friggin' desert, like canyons, that water carves through that landscape, picking up minerals along the way until it lands here in like our house. And we open the tap, and all the water like has a lot of minerals. Um, I'm sure that your water source is very different. Do you know like where your guys' water comes from?
Yeah, I think it comes from a reservoir here in New Jersey,
Uh-huh.
that is like basically like a really giant man-made lake,
Mhm.
um, which is they interestingly it used to be a town, and then they paid everyone to move, and then they flooded the town to make the lake.
Bro. Interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm. I hope everyone got out, or you'd have some interesting
Yeah, well,
panic
but there's like
volatiles.
still houses at the bottom of the lake. It's very
That's
New Jersey of us,
crazy.
yeah.
Cool, like water terroir. Um, I didn't know that. I'd only known that your water is we consider it very, very soft. I think like 70 to 80% of the United States, which is where we're based, is like hard water. So you guys are the chosen ones, having ready to go like softer water.
Yeah, I know. Like, even as a kid, I would visit my family in Virginia, and they have like well water,
Hmm.
really, really well water.
Yeah.
And as a kid, I would just be like, I don't like the water here. Like, even if they just like made macaroni and cheese, it wouldn't taste right, you know? Because it just,
Oh my gosh, that's really funny.
yeah,
Steven made the funniest face. It's like Nicole was really a taster when she was little. I love that. That's
yeah,
great.
yeah.
Um,
Like, you took a shower and it would smell like eggs. Like, yeah,
yeah, yeah. You would want to take a shower here.
I'm
Here
sure.
in Vegas. Knowing your water comes from like a reservoir, you're probably closer to like the snowmelt or whatever it is that's like, where that lake is sourced. And so there's
Mhm.
less time for your water to pick up minerals from the environment. And we don't like to call them like bad waters because we want to respect like we have water. That's great. I'm
Of
just boiled
course.
water. They're just less suitable
Definitely.
for tea, maybe, you know? So your question was what makes like a soft versus hard water? It's just the amount of minerals that are contained in the water, basically. You can, if you want to keep going, we can keep talking about it more and more. But that's a good start. You can spend 2 years looking at like water science, and if you
I'm
are
sure.
interested in it, highly recommend. You know, it's there's a lot to like unpack there.
Definitely, yeah. It's a huge subject. But I think it's really cool like what you're doing with Tea Curious Water because you're making it more accessible for people. Where, to figure that stuff out on your own initially can be really hard and scary. Where I think even just as like a way to get your feet wet, it's a really cool way to start to explore the difference the water can make.
Yes. Can I say, like, I did not start out as a chemistry person. In high school, I flunked chemistry. Like my chemistry teacher, I went to like normal chemistry, I passed, no problem. The next year I did AP chemistry because I thought I was so smart. And my chemistry teacher at the end of that year was like, Ree, I wish you did better in my class. I remember Mr. Caruana telling me, I kind of want to go back to Sierra Vista and
Yeah.
tell him like, Mr. Caruana, like I like invented this like water like formula using fucking chemistry.
Yeah.
Now we're really happy about it. But you know, that's what I love about tea is that it's such a different medium through which you can discover something that you might have thought you were allergic to before. Because if you ask me about like other chemistry stuff, I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't want to care. But because tea did this, like the moment that you try like a side by side of mineral waters, you're like, you can't help but wonder like, what is happening? What is this magic going on? That I saw you put the same two teas in those bowls. And there's the same teaware, same brewing, and everyone around you is agreeing like this is insane. What is
Yeah.
happening? And then chemistry becomes exciting and accessible and fun, like actually fun. And so, you know, we went down the rabbit hole of like hundreds of like studies, peer-reviewed studies on like tea organoleptics and like water chemistry. And we developed a water calculator for all the ions and stuff. Like I never would have thought we would go there. But tea like is like the magic carpet that like, no, let's go and you'll have fun actually.
Yeah.
So I really encourage anyone who is interested in water, but maybe you don't identify as like a chemistry person or a sciencey person. I totally understand that. If you are a sciencey person, amazing. Like help us like make it more fun, you know, for people who feel a little bit intimidated by it. But I hope for more people to be excited about this stuff that is traditionally dominated by people who only went to like college for STEM or men, you know, or people who went to like whose families have been going to college for multiple generations, you know. I've noticed that in our water studies is at first we had a lot of honestly like people who went to college who were male and had a lot of disposable income and who did science who liked it. And then our customers and community who I know you're super smart, you're super expressive, you are so capable of doing this. They would almost like exclude themselves from the topic. Oh, like, oh, I'm not good at that. Or
Mm.
like I just don't do that sciencey stuff. And I totally understand it. It's not anyone's fault necessarily, but thank goodness tea is there for us to be like, I don't need you to care about pH, but watch. Let's do this tea experiment. You're going to care about pH with me.
Yeah,
You can
definitely.
believe. So, yeah, thanks for letting me share that.
Yeah, and I think tea is really a great gateway to, explore so many things beyond just tea itself.
Mhm.
Definitely one of my favorite things about
Yeah. So wonderful.
it. So what tea are you drinking?
Ooh, right now I'm having our Qingjing Early Spring White. It's a white tea from Nepal, from Taiwan. I was doing Nepal all week, but I took a break with the Taiwanese tea today. And so this tea is being brewed with our water, of course.
Nice.
Sometimes we use RO, but it's Tea Curious Original here. And yeah, I don't know. To segue with that, I choose which water. We have three different waters based on which tea I'm brewing that day. So, for example, yesterday I had our new Nepalese tea, which is like a summer harvest, like monsoon harvest black tea, and I used our heavier water, autumn, to brew it. And I was having tea with some of our community members, and I was like squeeing in my seat. I'm like, oh my god, like the flavor notes are so different when you are changing your water based on the tea. If you want to go that specific, I welcome it. If it feels like overwhelming, you don't have to go there. But it is true that the water that you're using will subtly influence the tasting notes that you're getting from the tea. So, for example, this tea right now has like almost like a cucumber water taste to it. Um, I really like using a softer water for higher quality teas because softer water lets the tea breathe a little bit more. Um, our water original is called original because the purpose of that water is to show the original flavor compounds in the tea. And this is a more expensive tea. This is like a wild grown tea, a very small harvest, processed really, really well. So I want a water that's going to be like, okay, I'll just let you do what you want to do. It's like if you take a beautiful photo, you don't have to put like a heavy Instagram filter on it. On the other hand, if like a photo needs a little bit like playing around with, you can put a heavier filter or influence on it, right? That's when I use a heavier water like autumn, which, like works with the flavor compounds of tea just a little bit more to develop them. And better said, like if you can just taste it, if you don't mind, I'll suggest a test for our listeners.
Oh yeah,
Be
absolutely.
able to do this because I'm like, oh my god, do I have to buy Reese like friggin' water? Do it later. I'd love it if it matches for you. Like email us if you have any questions. But first, like see if it matters to you and if it's interesting enough for you to try it. We recommend what we call the Voss Evian test. It's 2 waters because some people see our posts. It's like, oh my god, you have 8 waters. Like that's a lot of waters, Ree. I don't have the time to like do the experiment. I'm like, oh, totally. Just do 2. Voss Evian. Okay. Voss and Evian are available almost everywhere. So even if you're listening from like overseas, you could probably find Voss. You could probably find Evian. And those 2 waters are bottled waters that are bottled from a single source, meaning Voss is like Norway or something like that. I forget.
I think so.
Norway? I think it's Norway, right? We've worked with Voss so much, but then I just forget because we just use our own water. But fine, use Voss. And it's very, very light, very soft, like one end of the spectrum. That's like your one end. Evian goes way in the other direction. That's a very heavy water. And so you can get the 2 different sides of the spectrum, brew the same tea with those 2 waters, and see what happens. You're basically copying what, the experiment how long, that was like 10 years ago now?
That was like 10 years ago, yes.
Yeah. These are unforgettable experiments.
Definitely.
And we've done classes and courses with, our water work. And people are always so shocked. I get so excited when people send me their pictures from around the world of like, Ree, I did the Voss Evian test. This is incredible. I can't friggin' believe it. Or, maybe it's just a little bit of difference, but it is a difference. So those 2 waters, Voss and Evian, same water, same different water, same teaware, and you'll taste the difference. Oh, and then use green tea because green teas they tend to be a little bit more receptive to the changes in water. They're very dramatic.
They are dramatic.
Yeah, super dramatic.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's one of the really cool things about tea that, a lot of other beverages, they're kind of put in a bottle and they are what they are. You don't really have any input into them,
Yes.
But with tea, there's so many different things like this that you can play around with and manipulate to create a different experience.
I hear you. That makes me so excited to hear you say that. Because, we in tea look up to like our big brothers and sisters in wine a lot. Like, oh, wine's so developed. Wow, it must be so nice to wine. And that's true. But, I think like it's less of a spectator sport in tea. We get to open the bottle, open the tea and actually be the last transformation of that tea, which I think is a lot of like can be stressful and like a lot of responsibility. Oh, how am I going to brew it? Oh my God.
Yeah.
And also like, that's freaking cool. You're involved.
Absolutely.
You don't just like watch what happens.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. I mean, like you can decant on wine, but that's kind of about as much input other than like maybe chilling that you really have into the taste.
Right.
Or with tea, you're right though. It does in some ways it does feel a bit heavy because like so much went into the tea before it even got to you,
Right.
and it's up to you if it's going to be good or not, really.
Right. Right. And not to say we don't like wine. I mean, we love wine and sake.
Oh, of
We're
course,
like
yeah.
relaxing. We're just like, I just want to taste something and not worry if I'm brewing it correctly.
Hmm.
But we chose tea. That's our fault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
and
have
I do
different
really like that you have the different formulas. I think that's a really cool approach. That like I've seen like in coffee, I've seen that there's a couple of companies that like make water or things like that, but they kind of have like one way.
Mhm.
But I think like just from the get go in that you're kind of just encouraging and suggesting that there's a lot of different ways that you can do that.
Mhm. Yeah. If you don't mind, I'll use the three waters we have as examples.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's three waters: original, springtide, and autumn, and they're exactly like what they sound like. Original, if you want to get the original flavor of the tea. Springtide, good for Japanese tea. I think you're having a Japanese tea. And autumn is like it makes things more toasty and cozy. And each of these three are like based on, and that was why we developed this product, so we don't have to like buy bottled water. It's the same minerals you find in like natural water. If you look at the back of like a Voss or Evian when you do this test, you'll see like calcium, magnesium, sodium, chloride, sulfate. Those are all natural minerals in water. That's all we use for our water. Um, and what it is we based each water off of different areas and different teas that are favored in that area. For example, original is based on Tiger Running Spring. It's a famous spring in Hangzhou where Longjing, like dragon well, is made. And that's like famously good for green tea and like really refined finesse, like Chinese greens, early harvest teas, high end, like, just really finesse Chinese teas is that water. And then you go over to Japan, and this is where subjectivity comes in again. It's like that water is not the same water you get in Japan. It doesn't brew the same way, even if they're both soft waters. So both original and springtide are soft, but they have like a different way of like interacting with the tea. So while original makes things like bright, poppy, vibrant, a little bittersweet, very, very tea, almost like leafy.
Hmm.
Springtide's like, well, we're in Japan, different aesthetic, different water that shaped this tea culture. It's a cool feedback loop because the people made the tea based on the water that they had locally, and they would kind of like calibrate the way that they made tea based on their local water, you know? And so Japanese waters and springtide is in particular meant to help highlight like the pure umami and like mellowness that is in Japanese teas. And so like you can kind of like bounce around and like mix and match. And again, if you throw a tea into any of these like waters, it'll show up as three different teas, which is really, really fun and incredible. And then autumn, I was mentioning, I use it for the black tea I did yesterday. Make it bassy, cozy, toasty. If you like brown sugar notes, chocolate notes, fruity notes, like heavy texture. People like it for yan cha. People like it for anything like dark and like roasty. And I even think like that might be a water that you might have some interest in trying. That water, anything heavier.
Hmm.
If you, let's say, go back to Virginia or wherever you go, that's a little bit heavier than your water. That actually might be a tea that you might find some interesting new things more so than your local water, because those really dark teas almost read a little thin with soft water. It depends on your preference, but when you hear like chocolatey notes, when I hear someone say like, "Oh, there's rich chocolatey notes," I almost think this person has medium water. I hope you do the Voss Evian test at least, Nicole.
Yeah, I definitely need to. I haven't actually like done a lot of experimenting with bottled water, uh,
Mm-hmm.
but it definitely like it's so funny. My husband always makes fun of me but I've converted him because I know you mentioned Fiji water,
Uh-huh.
and I would always be drinking Fiji water. He's like, "Why do you always get Fiji?" And I'm like, "Because it's soft." And he's like, "Water can't be soft." And then when he tried it, he was like, "Oh my god, it is soft."
That's so funny.
And now he'll like, I hear him tell people like, oh man, Fiji water's so soft. That
Yeah.
it's very interesting that even just something like that, until somebody really like points it out to you, you don't necessarily notice that it really
Right.
does make a difference. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Dang. I'm glad he accepted this truth.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do the Voss Evian test as like a husband tea torture episode. That would be fun.
Yes. And then like try to, I don't know, trick him into like picking the one that's like less classically beautiful. Because there is one water that's like the less like, if you ask like a Chinese tea researcher, it's like, no, that can't be the one that's good. But
Mhm.
that'll be fun. That'll be fun. Oh my
That
gosh.
would be definitely.
Could do it with matcha too. Oh my god, matcha reacts so dramatically with water. My god.
I could see that definitely.
Yeah. But okay, thumbs up. More torture. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I know. We keep saying ever since we moved, we keep saying we need to film more episodes. So that's definitely a good idea to push us to do it.
I would love to see it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Definitely.
I did my own version of we're not married yet, but husband tea torture when we were developing the formula. Like, who do you think did all the dishes? And did all the hundreds of tests with like our friggin' like 6 bowls and like that was my husband tea torture.
Yeah, I can. That definitely would require a lot of dishes.
How many dishes, Nicole? Oh my god. Oh my goodness, but it's okay. It was worth it. We were just like experimenting with tea, so no probs.
Absolutely. Well, where can people find Tea Curious Water?
Yes. Message us. You can go to the website if you want to, but this is a conversation. This is a topic that can be a little intimidating. So if you're feeling like you want to get recommendations or you have what's quote unquote a stupid question, there's honestly no stupid questions. Water is very overwhelming. Thank you for like having the ability to like flow through this like relatively quick episode about what can be like a like complicated topic. And yeah, like message us and let's talk, and any questions that you have. This is like a relatively new kind of like generation of like tea people doing water study these days. I mean, this study goes back like to Lu Yu. He was nerding out about water in 730 AD. That's so freaking long ago. So like we think he's like our tea nerd, water nerd ancestor. But it's hard to parse. So yeah, message us, talk to us. We're on Instagram at tcurious, and then our site is tcurious.com. And if you use the message function there or the email, that just goes to us. And what happens when we get these emails is we get so excited because we can practice being able to communicate about this and like see just how differently people interact with water, just like anything else in tea, like you're like, oh, what? You like that kind of gaiwan? I didn't know you like bone china gaiwan. Let me look at bone china gaiwans. So we're all learning together. So yeah, find us there.
Yes.
That's Nicole, because by then
we have a ton of informative articles on her website too. So definitely check those out.
Yay! Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share some tea and chat about water. And I'm sure I'll talk to you again soon.
Yes. Thank you so much, Nicole. This was so fun. I appreciate it.